The bizarre and terribly executed kidnapping of Frank Sinatra Jr. Frank Sinatra Jr. was held hostage for just over 2 days before the kidnappers became anxious and set him free before retrieving their ransom. In 1963, just 2 weeks after President John F. Kennedy was shot, another American icon would find himself in the middle of a tragedy, though one with a slightly happier ending. On December 8, 1963, 19-year-old Frank Sinatra Jr., son of blue-eyed crooner Frank Sinatra and known affectionately as Jr., was kidnapped. On paper, the plan was well thought out. 3 young men, Barry Keenan, Joe Amsler, and John Irwin, former classmates of Jr.'s older sister, arranged to kidnap the famous crooner's son and hold him hostage for ransom. The boys had been following Jr.'s budding career, following in his father's footsteps, and figured that Frank Sr. would pay a hefty sum for his talented son's safe return. They later admitted that they had considered kidnapping Bob Hope's son, but decided against it as it would be un-American. In the end, Jr. seemed like a better bet, as given Frank Sr.'s history, it wouldn't be morally wrong to make him suffer for a few hours. First, during the kidnapping, they had let the one witness to the abduction go free. Frank Sinatra Jr. had been staying at the Harris Club Lodge in Lake Tahoe and was sitting in his dressing room with a friend at the time of his abduction. Keenan and Amsler made the initial abduction and tied up Jr.'s friend with adhesive medical tape, blindfolding him as well before taking Jr. to their car. Within minutes, Jr.'s friend had freed himself and notified the authorities that his friend had been kidnapped. Given that Jr. was the son of a high-profile man, the FBI was almost immediately brought in. After receiving a description of the car, they set up roadblocks on the roads leading out of Lake Tahoe but ultimately missed the kidnappers. The kidnappers' next folly came when they made the ransom demand. Despite the fact that Frank Sr. had offered a $1 million reward for his son's safe return, Irwin, who had been in charge of orchestrating the ransom, only asked for $240,000, believing, correctly, that the kidnappers were obviously not seasoned pros. The police advised the Sinatra family to follow through on the ransom demand and pay the $240,000 as it would likely lead them to the culprits. The FBI photographed the money before dropping it at the designated drop site, a Texaco gas station in Sepulveda, California. The third and possibly most laughable misstep that the killers made came after the ransom demand. Though they had intended to hold Jr. hostage for as long as it took to get the ransom money, and possibly even longer, Frank Sinatra Jr. was released after just over 2 days. While Keenan and Amsler went to go pick up the cash from the Texaco, Irwin grew nervous. Rather than wait for his cohorts to come back with the money, he simply let Jr. go. Frank Sinatra Jr. was picked up a few miles away in Bel Air and taken to his mother Nancy's home. Irwin then folded to his brother, who called the FBI, who located Keenan and Amsler mere hours later, still in possession of the entire ransom. All 3 men were later convicted of kidnapping, despite numerous conspiracy theories that argued their innocence. Some theorists argued that Frank Sr. had orchestrated the kidnapping himself as a publicity stunt, while some believed that it had been real and orchestrated by the mafia, to whom Sinatra had multiple well-known ties. In the end, the FBI and the courts ruled that the kidnapping of Frank Sinatra Jr. had simply been the poorly executed brainchild of 3 disgruntled classmates looking for a spot in the limelight. Though the case could have ended in tragedy, it soon devolved into a media frenzy and became one of the most infamous and ridiculous kidnapping cases in history.